Hello and welcome to this special edition of Inside Government. Our conversation with the Civil Registry continues. This time around, my guest in studio is Section Head Back Office of the Civil Registry of St. Martin, Mrs. Denise Williams-Warner. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Cedric. I'm happy that you are having me here today.
I wanted to theme this segment with the Civil Registry, and people might find it funny, but Cradle to the Grave, Back Office Services of the Civil Registry of St. Martin. The services of the back office actually does look at things from that perspective. It takes into consideration
Absolutely.
birth, it takes into consideration marriage, it takes into consideration divorce, and it acknowledges death.
Yes.
Let's start from the beginning. Always the good and happy thing, birth, and welcoming those who are coming into our country from that time in their life. Let's start with that topic of birth. When the Civil Registry looks at birth, we have acknowledgments, pre-acknowledgments, registration. Let's first of all start with the acknowledgement aspect. How does it work?
There's different aspects, or there's different points with acknowledgement. But before we begin, I would like to start with birth because a child is born. And what happens next? A child is born. That child needs to be registered. A birth certificate needs to be drawn. And therefore, the parents or the informant, anyone who has witnessed that birth, has to come to the Civil Registry Back Office Services to register that birth. If that child is born to a mother who is unmarried at the time of the birth, then that child will have the family name of the mother. That child will come from the mother and has the family name of the mother. We move on to the acknowledgement aspect. And in that part, we have different options. A child, or let me say, a woman who is pregnant at the time can do the process of pre-acknowledgement. And pre-acknowledgement means that at the time of the birth of that child, once that process has been done, that child will be born with the family name of the acknowledger, not a given name, not a date of birth and those things. The process is solely for the family name. So once that has been established, and of course a certificate has been drawn or made, as we say, once that child is born, the family name becomes that of the acknowledger. Another option would be at the time of the birth of the child, if the acknowledgement has not taken place, that acknowledgement being done at the time of the birth. So mean birth and acknowledgement.
Right.
By law, there's 5 days to do that process. If that process is not done within 5 days, then it means that that acknowledger and the mother will have to prove via DNA that that child is, in fact, the child of the person who wants to acknowledge the child. And then the process can be done at the Civil Registry with that DNA.
So that takes
Yes.
place
Yes.
after the 5 days if it does not happen
Within
by
the
law.
5 days. A child can also, once that child has been born, be registered, as I said prior, with a mother. And the acknowledgement can also take place after the fact, after the birth. That is also where a DNA test will also have to be provided. So there's 2 scenarios where the DNA test is necessary.
Right.
Once the child is registered without a father, then that acknowledgement can take place and then a DNA test is required. Or if it's done after the 5 days of the birth of the child, during registering the birth and the acknowledgement at the same time.
Now, these procedures sound like as if they fit in perfectly with the scenario of a person who is outside of wedlock.
Right.
That is correct. So just want to make sure there's some clarity there. So this is a procedure that one would take into consideration strongly if they are outside of a wedding arrangement or marriage arrangement.
A lot of times we have at the registry, people would come who are married and want to do that process. And I want to inform them by law that that process is only available for a woman who at the time of the birth of the child is not married. So married couples, your child is being born within marriage, and by law, that is considered and legitimate child, and therefore there's no need for an acknowledgement.
Now, let's look at the scenario of, does the Civil Registry make a contact with the St. Martin Medical Center when it comes to the establishment or accurate information related to births?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we go to the medical center every Wednesday in the morning hours, and all births that are recorded, we take note of those. We go back to the office. We draw up a birth certificate, and then we have the parent or parents sign that certificate at the medical center. And this is actually to help us, first of all, with statistics, because we are the department basically that provides statistics to government and other non-governmental companies.
Right.
It also helps us with having accurate information as to children who was born where, if the child was born in St. Martin, and so forth.
Pre-acknowledgement. We talked about this. What exactly is it, first and foremost, and how does it work?
Pre-acknowledgement. Pre-acknowledgement is at the time of the birth of a child, that mother of the child not being married, having the status of a single woman, and that woman may let her companion, her partner, acknowledge that child. Simply, that's what it is. So it's vital that people, when there is a change of certain things in life, certain situations, their names, family names, that they inform us and they come to the registry so that we can at all times update their information.
When disaster strikes, it affects all of us.
Yeah, girl. Tell Desan to come and see me. I'll put her name at the top of the list.
You need to know that as a citizen, your rights are always protected.
I just need help.
Here, fill those out.
I have filled out this form 3 times already. I need help. This is just a waste of time.
If you feel your rights have been violated or have a legitimate complaint against any government body, even in these troubling times, we are here to listen to and act upon your concerns. The Ombudsman will use all of its resources to seek a fair resolution, keeping the government fully accountable. The Ombudsman, protecting your rights. Brought to you by the International Ombudsman Institute.
Hi, what's up, St. Martin? My name is Rene Leverett, and I play baseball. And I've represented St. Martin in numerous international tournaments and professionally around the world. Sports matters to me because it reveals and develops character. So I challenge the business community to step up for sports and help us rebuild and repair our facilities. I also ask the community to nominate local businesses in your area to take the challenge and step up for sports. Because hashtag sports matters, hashtag are you in?
Registration continuing down the line, updating information as it relates to breeder documents. I've heard this expression being used. First of all, let's define what is a breeder document and exactly how does that work?
A breeder document is the documents that are submitted to the civil registry, and that can be a birth, death, marriage, acknowledgement, and so on. Okay. Those are all breeder documents. Those documents are necessary to update the information in our basic administration. Oftentimes, people are registered and there are information that are missing on their facts of life. So parents' information, they may have a change of name that was done after being registered. And all that information, they have an obligation to inform the registry and, of course, bring that documentation so that we can update their information. I will give a small example of persons who were born in the United States of America. There are different types of certificate. You have the short version and you have the long version. And a lot of times people come with the short version. And by law, that is not the version that we need, because based on our basic administration, it demands that we update certain fields. And some of those fields are the information of the parents as well as the individual. So that's why we ask for the long version certificate so that we can enter that information in the system. It can be, if it's not entered, the consequences are people may ask for a family tree, for example, and we may not have the information to complete such a tree that they can use for inheritance and so forth.
Yes.
So it's vital that people, when there is a change of certain things in life, certain situations, certain their names, family names, that they inform us and they come to the registry so that we can at all times update their information.
So what happens in the event that someone does have a discrepancy with name? Explain to us in brief the process one would have to go through if there's a discrepancy between a birth name and acknowledgement name and what is on a birth certificate. How does that work?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We have at the office a judicial team. What we do is we take a look at all documents. We would discuss amongst us the information on the certificate and what is the next step. If the person has to submit a new birth certificate with the new facts, or if they have one that's readily available, then we use that to update the information in the basic administration. And also, as a result, it could be that the person may have been born in St. Martin but had life-changing facts away from St. Martin. Then we also use that information to update the registers of the civil registry.
Okay. Marriage.
Marriage, my
Yes.
favorite topic.
We get you've grown up now, you've fell in love, you want to move on to the next step of your life, and marriage is now the topic. Tell us about the procedure one would need to keep in mind when it comes to preparing once they've fallen in love and they have to now do the official part, which is to come into the civil registry. Explain this process to us.
The law states basically that you can register for marriage 14 days minimum before the date of marriage. A lot of times what people do is that they plan everything and last minute, I forgot to go to the registry to register my intention to marry.
Right.
And so all documents has to be submitted: birth certificate, identification, witnesses. All of that is important factors. And of course, payment. Marriages are done at the new government building because our marriage hall after INMA is still not, it's no longer in use for the registry.
Mm-hmm.
So our marriages are performed at the new government building. And of course, persons can also get married away from the building.
Okay.
We have tourists who come to St. Martin, quite a lot of tourists who comes, and they want to see the sea, sun, and sand and love our island so much that they decide to get married here. And of course, there is a fee attached to it, depending on your status, depending if you are a registered citizen or not, and depending of the location of the marriage.
How much does it cost?
For locals, it can start at 315 guilders.
Okay.
And if you're a tourist, it can go up to 735 guilders,
Wow.
depending on the location, of course, and their status.
Okay. All right. Do we get a lot of locals that
Absolutely. People get married
married.
every day.
Okay, and they actually make use of the outside of the civil registry
and some
scenario?
persons do recently have been making use of getting married away from the registry at the beach or at any other location away from the registry. And of course, on the Dutch side of St. Martin, that is also important to note, as we're one island with two different nationalities.
What does one have to think about when it comes to signing the marriage intention document? First of all, what is it and how does that work?
That document is simply a document that the bride and groom has to come to the office and sign, stating that it is their intention to get married minimum 14 days from the day that that document is signed. So the process is that they come to the office with all the relevant documents, identification and payment. That document is drawn up, that intention to marry document is drawn up. Once all documents has been found correct by the registrar, and once it is signed, then they can then proceed with the plans to marry. Of course, the law states that you can marry 14 days after you have signed the intention to marry document, but you have up until 1 year to finalize that marriage document, stating that he has given permission for the divorce. Once that is done, that is where the excitement comes in. The couple has to make sure that that document is submitted 6 months after the date of the court recorders has signed it and it's dated. Because if it is not submitted within that 6 months, then I'm afraid they are so very much still married.
Hello, St. Martin. My name is Jose Helga and I play basketball. I have organized basketball events in St. Martin. Sport matters to me because it makes everybody come together in unity. So I challenge the businesses community to step up for sports and help us rebuild and repair our facility. I'm also asking the community to nominate local businesses in your area to take on the challenge and step up for sport because sports matter. Check out the Department of Sports SSN Facebook page for more information. Hashtag Sport Matter, hashtag Are You In?
When disaster strikes, it affects all of us.
Yeah, girl. Tell Desan to come and see me. I'll put her name at the top of the list.
You need to know that as a citizen, your rights are always
Please.
protected.
I just need help.
Here, fill those out.
I have filled out this form 3 times already. I need help. This is just a waste of time.
If you feel your rights have been violated or have a legitimate complaint against any government body, even in these troubling times, we are here to listen to and act upon your concerns. The Ombudsman will use all of its resources to seek a fair resolution, keeping the government fully accountable. The Ombudsman, protecting your rights. Brought to you by the International Ombudsman Institute.
Hello, St. Martin. My name is Stephanie Medina, and I play football with the Walichi Women's Soccer team. I have represented St. Martin in many different games. For example, the Dutch Caribbean Women's Soccer Cup. I played against Bonaire, Aruba, and Curacao right here in this stadium. Sports matter to me because it makes me happy, it keeps me fit and healthy, and it is very fun. So I ask the business community to take on this challenge and help us rebuild our facilities. And I also ask the community to nominate the local businesses in your area and take on the challenge and step up for sport. Why? Because sports matter. Check out the Department of Sport Facebook page for more information. Hashtag Sports Matter, hashtag Are You In?
Now, you don't want to go into this topic, but let's paint a realistic picture. You've had a beautiful marriage of over 25 years. However, things get a little sour, so divorce becomes the issue of the day, sadly. How does the system work in that regard, in regard to divorce? How are the courts involved? Explain this process to us as it's seen through the eyes of the Civil Registry.
All right. Someone wants to get divorced after so many years of marriage. That petition has to be submitted to court. And once it's submitted to court, the judge gives a ruling by form of a document stating that he has given permission for the divorce. Mm-hmm. Once that is done, that is where the excitement comes in. The couple has to make sure that that document is submitted 6 months after the date of the court recorders has signed it and it's dated. Because if it is not submitted within that 6 months, then I'm afraid they are so very much still married. And that has consequences.
Of course.
So it's important that people, once they have gotten that decision from court to register that marriage or register the document at the civil registry where we will actually be making our divorce certificate.
Mm-hmm.
So that document, in essence, is not the divorce certificate. It's permission for the civil registry to complete the last part of the process, which is drawing up a divorce certificate. Once they have not submitted those documents, then by law, they are still very much married and will have to go back to court so that a decision can be made again on that case.
Right. I was about to ask you what is the immediate consequence of that. So one would have to go back to the court,
yes,
and start the procedure again.
Yes.
And you have 6 months to get to the civil registry with the document signed off by the court to finalize.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Have we seen instances of this in our system? Where
one
the
or
civil
two
registry,
persons probably did not
it's not a regular thing. Let's
pay
just put it that way.
attention to the dating on the
It happens.
degree or the actual decision of the court, and then yes, they had to go back to court and do that process again.
Okay. Death, the declaration of death. How does this begin? When someone passes away, how does this process start? Who takes responsibility first and foremost? Explain it to us.
All right. By law, once someone dies, 2 declarations is given. So the doctor at the death of the scene or the crime who has witnessed has to pronounce the person that the person has died. With those 2 declarations, the family members come to the civil registry so our death certificate can be made. A lot of times in their moment of grief, they would authorize the funeral homes to come in and represent them where they will actually do that process of registering the death and also arranging for the burial process. So basically, the family members, the funeral homes who are authorized by the family members are allowed.
Difference between a death at home versus a death overseas. Explain that process for us.
A death overseas, it's very important that persons are aware that when their family members has died overseas, that they come to the registry with the death certificate, of course, a legalized death certificate, and they submit it so that we can update the information in the system. Because consequences of this is that if it's not registered, is that persons in times of election will get an election card. The civil registry cannot know that someone has passed unless we are informed by the family members. Mm-hmm. So with having that card or not having that information registered results in a card being sent out during election times. So those are one of the aspects that we can try to, in essence, minimize if people would inform us of these cases.
Right.
Also, persons who have died from abroad, if they're still in the system as alive, then it's not a good thing for our basic administration because then we have someone who are registered in the system who has passed. Mm-hmm. So also the totals in the basic administration of persons will not be correct. Right. So that is also important for persons to inform us of such. Persons who have died here away from the medical center, who has died at home or any other place on the island. Once that death has occurred, there's a government-appointed physician who goes to the scene and pronounce that person has passed.
Right.
And of course, a declaration is made. And with that declaration, the family members or, again, the funeral homes who are representing the family members can come to the registry and start the process for the death certificate and also the burial.
One thing I found very unique was the scenario of a person writing out and traveling to the Netherlands, passing away. What then happens in that scenario?
All right. Once a person has written out from the system, by law, we cannot amend and update your information. If the person has decided after they have left to return, at that point, we are allowed by law to update and amend the information. So someone may have written out from St. Martin, left the island, and then returned and has passed without coming to the registry, the civil registry, to re-register. It means that in the system, with basic administration, their information will stay as is from the moment they deregistered. Of course, a death certificate will be drawn, and that will be in our death registers. But as per the basic administration, we cannot amend or update that information because first, the person never re-registered while they were on the island, and then that person has passed, so we cannot update that information. But statistically wise, our death certificate will show that information.
All right, Denise, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us on this special edition of Inside Government, Cradle to the Grave, Back Office Services of the Civil Registry of St. Martin. Final words before we close off.
We have just had the launching of our online appointment system. And for those persons who don't have the time to come to the office, please take keen note of our new appointment system online and try as much as possible to make appointments online. Again, we are here to serve the public, and we, together with the public, working together, can achieve a well-running office and serve the needs of the public.
Acting Head of the Civil Registry of St. Martin, Mrs. Denise Williams Warner, thank you so much for being a part of this edition of Inside Government.
Thank you, Cedric.
And of course, to you, our radio listeners and television viewers, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this edition. If you've missed our broadcast, we invite you to log on for video on demand at the official government website, stmartingov.org. Be sure to also hit that subscribe button for the YouTube channel of the Government of St. Martin. And of course, tune into St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 for rebroadcasts of the special edition of Inside Government. On behalf of the team here at the Department of Communication, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for tuning in.